Too many emerging franchisors are missing out on the opportunity to energize their brand, energize their franchise sales process, and energize the success of their franchisees. And today we're going to have a great conversation with Nick Powills, founder of Mainland. We're going to talk about franchisee personas and how you should be thinking about your prospective franchisees through different personas, different touch points, and ultimately onboarding them and making them successful, which really gets the essence of creating a winning franchise system. We have our great friend Nick Powills here, founder of Mainland, and you guys probably know him from our community and from FranX. And we were having a conversation the other day, actually just a personal one, but Nick was talking about franchisee personas and what his team has been working on with their franchisor brands. And during the call, Nick must have mentioned that franchisee persona at least 10 times. I said, Nick, we have to do this on a podcast because I think too many brands are just jumping into strategies, deploying media, going to conferences, but they're not starting from the ground up, which is franchisee persona, and then just really beginning from there.
Is that the opening for me to just start talking?
No, so that is like, I would say, like, Charles, that's phrased really well.
No. It was phrased beautifully. Hi, Mom, by the way, our one viewer. Okay, so franchisee persona. This is a complex one for an emerging brand because the tail that wags the dog is someone with a check saying they're interested in buying your brand. It is nearly impossible to say no to someone that you've deemed financially qualified who says, I love your brand, let me in, especially in the early stages. So for an emerging brand to identify the persona of who you're looking for, it's tough. And it'll be very, very, very challenging to say no to the wrong people because we're conditioned as franchisors to sell franchises. Now, if you take a step backwards and look at the value of a franchisee, and I like to think of things in layers, like think of a layer of a cake. You see on the outside, you see the final product, but within the inside of a cake, there could be multi-layers of multi-flavors, and there's a lot of construct that goes into building this cake. With a franchise, it's much of the same. And so when we listen to the term franchisee, that's the outside of the cake. But there are franchisees who are going to get into your system and become a multi-unit operator within your system. And we'll just take that as a category of franchise owner. Well, when you look at the value of that franchisee and the impact to your business, and I'm not talking about at exit, I'm just talking about pure royalty that's coming in from a multi-unit franchisee, that franchisee is going to contribute more back to your business, which is going to give you a shot to win. And so when you're looking at you're looking at franchise sales and you're looking at who do I want to put in the most simplistic sense. If you go get someone that has enough money to buy one, enough money for a rainy day, and enough money to scale, I call that the 3-pack. That doesn't mean you're selling 3, just means you're qualifying with that mindset. Well, that franchisee is going to be worth 3x to your bottom line versus someone that comes in and says, I just want to own one. And so when you flip the layers and you start layering and figure out who is my ideal franchisee, the brands that have gone from 0 to north of 100 tend to be the ones that actually have fewer franchisees. So it's a fault of the community, a fault of the industry that on the front end, we talk about selling franchises and we talk about how many deals we want this year. I would advise at the very starting point, you change that contract. You might still take the single unit operator, but if for every 10 franchisee, it might be 3 single unit operators. It might be three bets that you're going to make. You're betting on their grit and hustle. And then it might be 4 sure things, meaning I'm saying like these franchisees could scale. And so when you lay out that as your first 10 or your next 10, if you're agreeing to only have 3 single unit franchisees, once you've picked the 3, you're pushing that next one out. It doesn't fit into the construct of what you're trying to accomplish. And I think, again, like the umbrella statement ends up being the word franchisee is created equally, and it really isn't. That a super franchisee is going to give you the shot as a franchisor to do incredible things because of the amount of money it's going to kick off.
Well, let's look at this from two perspectives, right? Because there's one I'm really interested in. It's the attraction stage, identifying, and before we even dive into this, I just want to get your take on what you define as a franchisee persona, what buckets of qualities you're looking at. But from there, right? So we're speaking with emerging brands, that's in our community. I want to look at the franchisee persona from the attraction stage and also the long-term value, which you're referencing long-term value, which is, hey, we onboard one-for-one franchisees are not equal. You get the right franchisee, whether good operator, multi-operator, they're worth much more. But also on the attraction stage, Nick, I feel like every emerging franchisors and the vendors they're relying on are out there acting as if every franchisee is equal, but also preparing their media and their approach as if everyone's going to fall into the bucket of that good fit franchisee. So just at a baseline from a marketing perspective, as you guys are doing lead gen and PR and you're seeing this cycle happen, like how does an emerging brand start developing what is that good fit franchisee persona?
Okay. I think I can get to that answer, and I'm gonna give an example. So Ty McBride, you're a fan of Ty's, right? And so Ty in the early stages with Preservin can do a few things. He could either just go out there, use the broker network, which that is a tool that a lot of emerging brands use, or he can build what is the traction to the model. And so what we have to look at is pathway of least resistance. He is creating a new category. He's building one in home services. And so that's a little bit more expensive to build up the energy around that, because now you have to explain to an operator, because Preserving, there's going to be customers who are fans of the brand. The likelihood of fans of the brand becoming franchisees is not huge in home service. So how am I gonna track someone in here? And so again, like I go to the pathway of least resistance, and I'm doing this in real time. But he went to Northwestern Oklahoma State University, and if we think Northwestern Oklahoma State University, and now I'm going to add in Ty McBride, and I look on Google News, and there's nothing. If I went to you and said, and you'd be better at this than I would, but Kevin Heffernan, he's an actor. Do you know who that is? He went to Brooklyn Law School. He's a famous alumni from there.
Okay.
But if you saw something that here's this actor from Brooklyn Law School that's doing something that comes across to your LinkedIn newsfeed, would you click on it?
Yeah.
Right, because you went to Brooklyn Law School. I went to Drake University. You wouldn't click on anything to do with Drake if it came across. You would be like, that's a dumb college that Nick went to. Maybe you would say that, but you wouldn't click on it. And so when we start thinking about starting to break down a persona and how can we get early lift for an emerging brand, I look at Ty's footprint. There's no connection to his alumni network. I look at yours. There's no connection to alumni network. Yet we both know that we would click on those links. And so you start stripping out everybody that bought a franchise, and every franchisor that's created one has done something incredible before they got to that point. No doubt, because it's becoming a franchisee or a franchisor is a pretty monumental thing for a career. You're becoming an entrepreneur as the founder, or you're becoming entrepreneurial and owning your business as a franchisee. And so when you start stripping out what is the persona, you can start looking at university as just the basic side, because as a Preservin, I can educate about the community or educate about my business model. That's going to take a lot of energy. Or I take the backdoor approach and say, an alumni created a next big thing in home service. Now all of a sudden the alumni network starts connecting into this. And what this does is now it builds a pool of people. So let's say, Charles, you want to get in front of Brooklyn Law students and alumni because you know your story, they're going to want to buy your franchise. Well, now we start here, but then we got to consolidate that network to say, well, here are the states that we're registered in, and here are the states we want to grow in. And so when you consolidate it down, now you took an insight that people are going to click on it because it's your university. You narrowed it down into the markets that you want to expand into, and the headline is playing into the fact that you did go to this university, which in turn is going to create the opportunity to have a click, which in turn is going to create an opportunity to have an educational moment. And so that's a long-winded statement to say merging brands skip over that. They say broker network or franchise portal, but that's a longer play than saying, how do I find what is interesting about my story that people that have similarities to my story will click on and engage with.
When a new franchisor comes online at the most basic level, I mean, something we talk about often is focus on the organic reach of your brand. And in a very, oversimplified way, it becomes initially your network, your social media, fans on social media, customers, friends and family, right? And that network of potential good fit franchisees and pioneering franchisees. So your point is, hey, okay, maybe that is a starting point, but now let's go even more micro or more niche and create some, touch points or concentric circles with alumni networks, community, social, because I do see brands do overlook this. We treat the market as one big giant bucket and not breaking it up into little buckets.
Yeah, because majority of emerging brands aren't going to have a blank check. And so you got to find Geraldo Rivera. That's your famous alumni from Brooklyn Law School.
Right.
I found it. They're not going to have a huge budget, and they're playing against brands that have bigger budgets, but they're also playing against brands that have the same budget. And so what happens is all of these brands go. The analogy that I would make, it's a pond, and so everybody's like, well, here's where the fish are. We feel the fish are in this area of the pond. So all the fishermen come over here, and then this one fisherman is like, yeah, but there's some shade by this tree over here. There's no fishermen. How do I go fish over there and catch the right ones? Because they're more likely to bite because they're not competing against all the other fish for the other food, and there's less fishermen. And so if you think of that as the analogy, now a brand, a food brand has their four walls. Like every customer that comes in is tasting the product and has a chance to fall in love with that business if you then connect in the fact that you're a franchise. But majority of brands aren't going to have the built-in first 10 or the next 10. And so you have to figure out a way. And so alumni network, your backdrop, like if I read an article that said former journalist buys a franchise, I'd be like, ooh, I'm a former journalist. I would like to buy a franchise. I would click on that link. And so you have to think a little bit differently here, especially when your budget is really tight, because you have to make those dollars count. And that's where I'm trying to extract elements of the persona, because that will help guide people in. Now, watch what happens. We take Brooklyn Law School. If you are in a room with Geraldo Rivera and you don't bump into his mustache because it's so fluffy, automatically you could say, hey, Geraldo, I love you as a TV personality. You're great. That might give you like a 3-minute conversation. But he said, dude, you went to the same law school as I did. Do you remember X? That could buy you an hour-long conversation. And so when you start thinking about, it's not just about selling the franchise and selling them on there. It's about finding the human bond that will make them trust you, that there's something greater than the business that says this person's going to have my back to build wealth for my family. And so that's why you take former accountant, former journalist, something in your career, Most people default to how many kids do you have? What are the ages of your kids? Like, we try to find this common ground for us to connect with. And I think this is the biggest miss for emerging brands in today's world. The common ground is stripped out through the broker network, and it's purely sales. And now a franchisor that grabs that broker candidate and builds that, great. But majority of them, it's just a sell, 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 sell. And so you haven't established the human personal connection, and there's no trust when you're going to go to war, because small business is fighting. It's war. It's a battle every single day. It's a grind to go get customers. Well, if I can go back and say, well, you're my buddy. You went to Brooklyn Law School, and I remember bonding with you over staying in dorm room X. I don't know if there's dorms at Brooklyn Law School, but the point is, now there's something human that layers on top of it. And now that I've grabbed your persona and aligned it back to my mission and vision and values as a brand.
The biggest issue I see is when brands come online, and whether they're new or 5 years into the journey, and the point you're raising is they get homogenized, right? They become the cookie cutter, training, support, and all these other things. And the advice here that Nick is sharing, which sometimes sounds obvious, but isn't so obvious, and simple, but it's not, which is to lean in on those affiliations and those connections, genuine. How should brands approach this? Like, what is the strategy? And look, I think one answer to the question is to be genuine and be thoughtful about the process. I mean, you mentioned preserve, and you'll also see mission. You'll also see Ty being on a mission in terms of improving and elevating craftsmen, right? So and so when you're focused on your mission as a brand, as the transformation you're looking to create, inherently you're going to kick up these persona elements and these touch points. But what would be a good brand check that someone's watching this video, things they should be looking at and answering yes or no? And if it's no, then I have an opportunity here and I should be focused on something.
Remember, it's layers. So if the outside of the cake is franchisor, you have to look at the layers. And we break the layers down to brands that have between 0 and 10 units, 10 to 25 units, 25 to 50, and 50 plus. Let's just build those as the categories. 0 to 10, you're not going to have a ton of wiggle room to nail your persona unless you have one thing, which is patience. And if you're opening up your franchise and you go, I want those first 10 to be crystal clear, awesome, and I'm willing to wait. There's not an expiration date at the end of the year. I want 10 deals by the end of the year. You're just saying, I want 10 deals and I'm going to do it right. And when they come in, I'm good, because you're cash flowing from your corporate unit. And so you don't have to be in a rush, because brands that go in a rush don't win. And so if you're not, now I've stripped that 0 to 10, you have patience or you have no patience. If you have no patience, then you're just going to go grip whoever is coming to you and saying, here's my check, let me into your business. It is what it is, and that's okay. Once you've taken that check and you haven't had the patience, now you have to put infrastructure around those franchisees and understand when you're taking checks and you're really not qualifying against who is the right fit, the odds of success deteriorate. Therefore, you as the franchisor need to have the right mindset that your guidelines might say you're going to give X in support, double it. And you're doubling that support and you're doubling that investment in exchange for what's going to happen when you go 10 to 25. And so you're investing in the future by investing in your franchisees, because you give them infrastructure. I'm saying, like, get on a plane and go get on that plane and go see them and stand with them and grind with them and go. Each of those first 10 franchises, you're going to keep going back and forth to give them more scaffolding, because you are not a CEO yet. You might have the title CEO, but you're a CEO of a small, mini, tiny brand. Go work and make them successful, which in turn is going to make more royalty, which in turn is going to make them happier, which in turn is going to help them scale. On the first side, if you have patience, then you're taking your time and you're finding it. Now, if you're 10 to 25, what you
Nick,
have,
I want to go back on one thing before we get to it. How should franchisors be evaluating those first 10 in terms of the persona, in terms of at least maximizing the odds that they're going to be the right fit to invest that time in?
should or must? Should is different because if I've given tons of advice on this is what you should do. Out of all the brands that I've advised, I would say less than 1% has taken that advice. So most brand, what they do, and this is the help point, is when you qualify someone financially that can open up one, the odds of them scaling and multiplying their portfolio to build wealth is very small. So let's not take my rule of three. Let's take a rule of two, that they have enough in the rainy day fund. In my opinion, the easiest pathway to give your brand scaffolding around the qualification process is to increase the operating capital and zoom out of that operating capital that you have, that you're requiring, and say, this is income replacement. And so if you're going to qualify someone that makes $120,000 a year, then that number better be $30,000 in operating capital, because over the course of those 3 months, to replace $120,000, you need $30,000 to replace it. And so what you've in effect done is you've increased the financial investment to come in. That's not cash that's going out of their pocket, but you just soften the stress level of them opening because they have $30,000 on the sidelines to cover their bills and keep things going. And so now you put that governor on there. Now, at least, the very least, you're putting one more qualification tool in your pocket. You set it, you forget it. It's like people that take a portion of their salary and instantly put it into their retirement and not think about it. You got to do the same here. You're basically saying, I'm going to add a governor on top of my franchise opportunity to help me qualify the right people. And if they don't have the 30, they don't have it. No, I'll say in my opinion, the cash is not the strongest currency in franchising. Grit and hustle is. Grit and, like, you take any founder story, Charles, yours, mine, Ty's, and you go back and you say, how did you do this? And there's always a great bootstrapping story. We don't come from money. We have grit and hustle, which is our primary currency, and enough cash to get us out of the gates. In franchising, unfortunately, when that fee is so high, the fee really eliminates all the people that have grit and hustle. So you qualify them out in most franchise brands. Because if you would have said, Nick, do you have $30,000 cash to go invest in a business? I didn't. I had a little bit less than $10,000 when I started our company, which is a multi-million-dollar company today. But every franchisor would have deemed me as not quality because I didn't have that cash. But I promised everybody that I would out hustle, and I had more grit than anybody that was going to compete against me. So that's the challenge there, is the number one form of currency is automatically eliminated. And if we're going to play that game, then we have to increase the amount of money that goes into it so that at least we're qualifying the right candidate.
What would be a checklist? So for a franchisor listening, what's the white space they're not looking at, the opportunity that they're not recognizing, or that their vendors aren't recognizing, and their media? Like, what would be a checklist of some categories or things they should be thinking about?
All right. Even before becoming a franchisor, let me be very clear. The franchise consultants that exist in franchising that help you franchise your business, it is all those baseball hats at the stadium that have the adjuster in the back. Like, it's one size fits all. And so you have to go into franchising, understand that the advice that you're going to be given is templated. When you're looking at your business, if you understand that and say, okay, that's how the industry works, let me take the template off and let me customize it for my brand. You may look at your business and say, I have an employee who is awesome. They have grit and hustle. They have no cash. Let me create a partnership model to help them become a franchise owner and let their sweat equity end up paying it off. I may say, I'm going to do an incentive where my franchise fee is only $5,000 or $10,000, which would let me into the system. I will finance the rest of the franchise fee over a period of time. You might look at your franchise fee and say, I'm going to give a discount to those who have a similar backdrop, teachers, if I'm in education franchise, someone that if you've worked on a truck, we'll give you a discount to get into preserving. Like I might look at things differently there. And so if you understand going into this, that the way that the consultants have set up your business is very templated. Now you have to look at it and say, how can I grip the grit and hustle component, especially for those first 0 to 10?
Nick, as we put together a building block here, right? And we're talking about personas and we're talking about those franchisees that are going to impact the system and the affiliations. What is a healthy franchise sales process, franchise sales discovery process look like when we're franchisee persona focused? We're trying to maximize our marketing dollars or our development dollars. How do you get to that? And maybe it doesn't exist, but how do you get to that special point where your brand feels energized, where it's pulling and attracting and it feels effortless, even though it's not, versus the brands that are struggling and they're getting stuck?
Here's what I love about that question. You said, what keeps the franchisor energized, right? And what keeps a franchisor energized is great franchisees. What kills all the energy is bad franchisees. And so the misnomer in franchises is that I have to sell franchises to win. But if you sell franchises to the wrong one, it will kill your energy, and to kill the energy of the founder is the worst disease that could exist for a franchise brand. And so it's such a tough thing to say. You and I have sat with franchisors that say, I have not sold a franchise in my first 2 years. I need to go sell. Sure. But maybe your time isn't right yet. Maybe you haven't energized the system the right way. Maybe you haven't built enough buzz about your brand, and therefore you're not standing out. Maybe you're a brand that really competes in the broker network against the brokers, and the brokers aren't showing you because of the amount of money that you're paying in commissions, and therefore you're down at the bottom, even though the viability of your business opportunity is greater than what is being shown. And so I think about like that word, like the biggest word and the most important thing for a franchisor to listen to is that word energy. And if you screw up your energy, if you're getting calls from your franchisees saying they're overwhelmed and they're stressed and it's not working the way that should be working, then you're going to burn out. And if you get burnout and your grit and hustle is hurt, you better have deep pockets, because the only thing that solves burnout is money. And you're going to have to outspend everybody else.
Yeah. There's two realities, right? 24 months from now, do you have X number of franchisees that are validating and super satisfied and giving back energy, right? It's a positive win-win, versus franchisees that could be impacting your item 19, not performing well. So you're right. It does take you off track. And then, you're describing franchisors, some of these emerging franchisors that get stuck and haven't sold franchises or having that resistance. So let's assume unit economics are good, your franchisees are satisfied. For those franchisors out there that getting stuck, or why is a competing brand that's not as good gaining traction through FSOs or brokers, I would say to those franchisors, it's time to reevaluate what you're doing, right? You mentioned cookie cutter processes, and so many franchisors get out of the gate with these development companies and consultants. Everything's static, everything's cookie cutter, which is fine. You get past it. We have to evolve, but they don't evolve. And so year after year, I was speaking at a broker conference. This really nice franchisor entrepreneur. She paid money to present at the conference. She was there, and she asked a question during one of my presentations. And honestly, even after her telling me about the business and I pulled up her website, I didn't know what the franchise was. I didn't know if it was retail. I didn't even know if it was consulting. After we had that conversation, which was candid and was public, brokers at that conference came up to me and said, "Thank you. We didn't know what they did." So how many franchisors are out there that haven't objectively reevaluated where they're at, right? And for those brands, Nick, what are like checklist questions that they should be asking? Like, do I have this, and that?
Well, okay, so you said two. I will answer that. There's two things that I think are important. First, on the cookie cutter side, you're enhancing your home right now, aren't you?
Yep.
Okay. And so you bought a home at some point where someone built a home and sold you this home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now you've lived in this home, and now you're making changes to it. I think franchisors have to think of going through the franchise process the same way. What you're buying is you're buying your starter home, and then you're going to go in and you're going to add enhancements. You might want a different paint color. You might want your kitchen extended. You might want a deck in your backyard. And so you have to look at buying a franchise the same way as buying a house. Most people don't move into a house and say, as is, I'm not touching anything. And so if you have that mentality, then what you bought is you bought a process and you got you to the starting line. So that is deeply important. The other thing you said is you have a franchisor that you didn't know what they were, and the brokers didn't know what they were. If you are a franchisor and you've chosen to let other people represent your business, you better give them the tools to sell your business. If you think about a car dealer, let's start with a car dealer. If I'm a dealer of Ford, I've bought a Ford car dealership. Well, Ford makes sure that I'm educated on, I'm not a car guy, but horsepower and technology and warranties. And so those salespeople, you walk onto the lot, the salespeople like vultures jump on you and they say, let me explain why this truck has a great Hemi. I don't even know what a Hemi is, but it seems like a cool word. But they know they're equipped to go sell that car. If the fake version of that is the broker community is the car dealership and you are the car manufacturer, imagine saying, hey, car dealership, I'm not telling you much about that car. Go figure it out. Now, a salesperson will try to figure it out. They're going to look at it and say, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. But now this isn't you selling a Ford. You are Ford. This is CarMax. And CarMax sells 100 different types of cars. And so the only way someone's going to be an expert at 100 different types of cars is by simplifying how they sell to the customer. So they're actually working on their sales pitch to the customer. But now, in order for your car in a CarMax to be the one that's shown when someone says, look, I'm looking for a sports car, and the salesperson says, I have 50 different sports cars I can sell you. Are you going to be number 50 or are you going to be number 1? Is how did you equip that salesperson to go sell your business? And so that example that you gave, they are on the lot. They've made it. You've paid your money. You are on the lot, but you're car number 50. And so for that salesperson to get to your car, they're going to have their buyer reject 49 others before they get to you. It just won't work. And so when you have that, and this is where the best brands that are equipping the world out there to sell on their behalf are saying, we have to simplify our message. We have to say what's our technology package, what's our warranty, what's our horsepower, so that the talking points are sound, and then it's kiss the ass of that salesperson and make sure that there's a relationship, because now the odds of that your car going from 50 to number 5 increases. And now that buyer that just came to CarMax is great. Brokers are great the broker community is great at pulling in all these people that want to buy a car, but you have to weasel your way into being one of those 5 so that you get shown and the salesperson is incentivized to push your brand.
I almost want to tell every franchisor, like, to hell with the whole market, meaning own your success. And you talk about owning your development assets. If you make the job of those salespeople easy, and I mean it in a genuine way, not a BS way, and you build your brand as if you'll never need brokers or third parties, where you have this attraction system, you'll bring on those professional brokers who will sell, and a nice balanced mix of organic paid media brokers. But what I do want to say also is, as an emerging franchisor, you have to take accountability. Like, for that person who people didn't know what her brand was, she probably got some bad advice, fluffy advice from a franchise developer. Fine. You get past that. Now the education, YouTube, all these master classes, whatever the case is. But you as a founder, you have to sit down and really take hold of what you're offering, what you're selling. I mean, for me, one of the biggest challenges years ago was sitting down and really evaluating, what are our core values? What is our brand story? What is the transformation, right? So if in your analogy, is it a truck that's built to carry payload for a farm and we're selling to farmers, or is it a sport car that's a recreational vehicle? So, I mean, the one point there is, emerging franchisors don't have enough capital to just pray that a salesperson or a consultant or an advisor is going to do the right thing. They got to take hold of all of these things.
That's right. Can I share a present for a second?
Please.
Okay, watch this. For argument's sake, I mean, you can see this from $29,000. Tesla is selling something that's between $20,000 and $150,000. Are we in agreement on this?
Yep.
Okay. And so a lower cost brand is also selling something between 20 and 150. And so I'm just going to start here. I'm going to do this in real time. I haven't even done this. But very simply, and you as a brand, you have to give this same sort of experience on, they're saying, the vehicle, the energy, the charging, the discover, shop, support. Very, very simplistic on what they're given from a menu standpoint. Very clearly, though, on their website, they're saying, look at the car. We have a financing special. They're calling it out. That's a persona push. But now there's only 2 options. And so think of your franchise buyer. They land on your site. What are the 2 options you want to give them? The demo drive is, I need to be educated on what it feels like to drive a Tesla. For a franchise buyer, I need to be educated on what franchising is. So do you want to understand franchising, or are you ready to order now? Now watch this. I go to order now, and now it's customizing my experience. And I can start picking things that I want. So do you want 1 unit? Do you want 3 units? Do you want 5 units? Where do you want it? And if we just think of the way that they walk the buyer through, being millions of dollars invested into the research on how someone buys something $150,000, you go here and you start customizing what you want, and the price is changing. And if we wanted to do this, we want self-driving. Now all of a sudden our $20,000 car has gone up to $41,000. But what it's doing is it's giving me a vision of what it's going to be like to be a driver of Tesla. Again, selling something that most likely less than your franchise. And so franchise websites don't do this. It doesn't walk the user through, like, this is how you start packaging things up. If this was the form of the future on what it looked like, and so that you had pure understanding, because step 1 is, can I even afford this? If I call McDonald's, I might want to own a McDonald's. I've dreamt about owning a McDonald's, but I start looking at what it's going to cost. I'm going to qualify myself out. And so, like, I'm just looking at that site as a very simplistic example of something that sells $150,000 or less. And if you as a franchisor, you look at that website and say, boy, that's so much better than mine, and you're selling something that costs the same, but yours is a little bit more complex because on Tesla, I could buy it today and sell it back tomorrow and walk away. Can't really do that with a franchise brand. If your site doesn't do those two things, do you want to be educated or are you ready to order now? Then I don't know that you're ready to go spend money on marketing to your persona. Like you have to have that foundational element down.
I love this. I'm actually excited right now. Let me ask you this. Put the website back up. From a franchisor perspective, Nick, on the Tesla site, you had buy now and you had on the homepage demo. And we talk about on FranX so often about answering questions about how do I do it? Can I do it? Why now? Why me? Why now? What in an ideal world, as you're thinking about franchise sales websites, personas, media, what does the demo drive look like on the website and in the discovery process for an emerging franchisor? Or I should say, what should it look and feel like?
I'm going to show you this example, and I'll say this is us trying to take this to the next level. Okay, so you could go through the process of starting a conversation, very clear call to action. You can either download a brochure or you can apply now. But what we're doing is we're adding a few elements here from a research standpoint on how franchising works and why you would want to get involved with it. And so you start looking at some of the research content. What we're basically saying is, let us guide you through the process of buying a franchise. And now what we're doing is we're adding videos to YouTube that answer the question of what is franchising. So if I click on this, and so now before starting a franchise, thorough research is crucial for success. And so you can watch this video on Kelly at Dog Training Elite talking about what is franchising from her viewpoint. The point of doing this is that now a buyer can come in here and start understanding what is franchising. So this is the demo page. And I think this is version 1.0, where we've tied in all this content on how to buy a franchise, exploring the item 19, so that it's connecting in and dialing in all of this content that will help the buyer understand how franchising works. And there's a video that explains it. This is the version of the demo. Now, if we took the Tesla approach that said, here, basically, you're selecting your location, where do you want to do this and when do you want to do this? If it was like, schedule a what is franchising call, skip the line and go right to the application process, like we could build this out so that it guides the user all the way through. But the point is, I think this is going to be, what is franchising is going to be a future must for franchisors to have on their site, where they're explaining how their FDD works and they are giving the tools to understanding what franchising is. Because if I've never driven a Tesla, I do need to go schedule a demo to make sure I'm comfortable with how all this technology works on the road, you know?
Nick, could you go back to the homepage on this? Because I really like the headline too, which again gets back to personas. I mean, here, what I love here is, sure, you're focused on the pet component and the passion there for pets, but also you're also tying this into, I love that made us the fastest growing dog franchise, right? That's a pretty powerful statement in the headline itself, right? Which gets to business elements.
Yeah, we're in this scenario, we're trying, again, what's the persona? Who are we trying to get in front of? It's a lower end investment. So it's not like we're looking for high end investors. They happen to have a CEO, Betsy, who is a current franchisee who assumed the seat of CEO as a part of the journey of the business. And so what we're highlighting is, here's someone that's walked a day in the life of your shoes. So when you're trying to figure out a brand that you want to bet on in this scenario, don't have a ton of money, you're dreaming of building wealth. Betsy went from 1 to 6 units. Then she became CEO of the business. Be like Betsy, follow her example, scale your business from 1 to 6, build wealth for your family, become a leader of a portfolio. And so that's where we're taking the Betsy persona and we're using it as a toolkit to now hopefully excite other people. Now, Betsy came from the oil industry. So we've also done campaigns of former executive of BP or ExxonMobil has jumped into dog training franchise. Why? Well, the beauty of that headline is now we can get in front of ExxonMobil, former ExxonMobil staffers, or current ones who are stuck in the grind and said, "Do you have a passion of pets?" "I do." "Do you work in ExxonMobil?" "I do." "Do you want to know what a former alumni of ExxonMobil is doing with her passion for pets?" "I'm intrigued." And so what that does is it creates a persona that builds a funnel that connects it all back to how we're presenting it back to the buyer when you land on their website.
Yeah, and it's not just an Exxon executive; it's also Betsy, a female executive, and so those personas like tail down. Nick, could you go down a little just scroll down a little on this homepage? I love this. Yeah, I mean, so for everyone out there, we're trying to decipher, right, or unlock the code here on how do we build this growth strategy? How do we get past the generic? I mean, Nick, this is a great example in terms of dog training elite, right? Because if I go there, I'm engaging with Betsy, I'm engaging with the story. I mean, quite frankly, I may have not even thought about this industry, but numbers are there.
Yeah, and
Culture.
well, let's be clear. I think that's a big statement too. Majority of franchise buyers have not thought about that industry before buying it. So now that's where, like, when we've talked with buyers on what it takes to buy a franchise, they talk about the business opportunity and they talk about the culture. Like, those are the two things. And then the above that statement is they have to be comfortable with the pure concept of even owning a franchise in the first place. If I take the train to work every day, I don't have a garage in my home, I don't have anywhere to plug in my car, I'm probably not going to be a good candidate for Tesla to market to me because I don't have a place to park the car and I have no place to charge it, and I already take the train to work. And so that's where, like, as much as we start finding the persona at the top to say, here's the business model, dogs, dog training, here's the culture, the people behind it, here's what franchising is. Before we even get there, you can also have almost negative persona to say, well, we're not going to go after someone who has these traits. Let's remove it from that process too.
Yeah, this is. I love how the video goes along as we're talking here, and the advice you're sharing is definitely can help shift the mindset in terms of sales process, media, and I think Dog Training Elite. This example is a great example, Nick, of how emerging brands should be approaching this process and thinking about things. And you're just going to a vendor and hoping they're going to do this for you. They're not, because it really takes a deeper dive. And really, it's interesting because it's almost like you're facilitating the brand to discover, what's underneath their brand and those personas. So this is helpful. And then, Nick, our next video, I really want to talk about when you have those conversations. I know at Mainland and your team, you're very focused on interviewing franchisees and understanding what makes them satisfied and not. So in our next video, really want to dive into what those conversations are like and what you're learning for your clients as you have speaking with franchisees.
Yep.
How would you rate this video, Nick? Like so far, this?
I would give it a solid 8.
Okay. All right. And then everyone, what's that?
But I'll tell you why. I think, me with my analogies, I think growing a franchise is much like flying a commercial jet. Most of us as franchisors want to get in, sit in first class, have our meal, and not have to really understand all the intricacies that go into the operations of that plane to get us from point A to point B. So us talking about these things, we can give the tools away to franchisors all day long. Most of them are not equipped to go to the front of the plane and fly it. Now that's issue 1. Issue 2 is there are plenty of people that say they'll fly the plane for you. but they fly like this because they really don't know how to fly a plane either. They tell you, well, we've sold 100 franchises in the last year. We've helped 1,000 brands. Well, it's all bullshit. And so the reason I give it an 8 is I think the information is a 10. But the odds of a franchisor taking these nuggets and putting it to work without help is a 4. And that's the issue in franchising.
Well, I mean, look, everyone who's in our community, you could reach out to Nick, but also we have our monthly live streams. Jump in on those, right? Our FranX live streams, ask these questions. But Nick, this is foundational. Like, we want our clients, we want these brands to own their development and own their success. And I think this is an important mindset shift. And in fact, I'm going to have to go back and redo my intro because I was looking at these personas the wrong way. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Talk to you later.